Okay, let's begin. I want to first thank everybody for joining. My name is Tibu Phillip. I'm going to introduce Dustin Brimberry. He's a senior technical trainer at AWS. He's going to be doing a lot of the heavy lifting on this presentation today, and I appreciate him taking the time to be with us here today. So Dustin, thank you. I appreciate it very much. My name is Tibu Phillip. Again, I'm a solution architect here at Svetla. Our talk today is specifically on data and analytics on AWS and why you really want to think about moving your workloads, specific database workloads, to AWS. So with that, I'll quickly begin. But first, what I would like to do is talk about Svetla first and foremost. Svetla Systems, many of you know, has been around for 18 years. We have 7 global locations, United States, 3 locations in Ukraine, Poland, Mexico, Costa Rica, and India, and possibly soon to be in Vietnam. So we're a global solutions and staffing provider. We have, like I said, 18 years of experience. We've been in this space for a long time. We have numerous partnerships with startups and enterprises all across the world, Europe and United States specifically. We currently have over 800 developers working over multiple projects, and we've completed thousands of projects. 90% of our customers are repeat customers, and they're very happy with things that we've done. So we have a wide range of expertise, and we can build solutions for you in whatever you need. So with that being said, we are I want to highlight this, a select AWS partner. We have a very close relationship with AWS now. We've done numerous projects that I will highlight later on in the presentation, specifically around AWS and for this case, databases, data and analytics. We've many certifications, specifically ISO 9001. And we've done numerous awards. Our CEO, Natalia Anand, is been in the industry for a long time. Stanford MBA, a truly phenomenal woman. Definitely, we would love to hear what your needs are, and we're here to help. One project at a time, and then to show what we can do, and then go from there. So thank you. I just quickly introduce myself. Like I said, my name is Steve Phillip, solution architect at Svetla. I've done a wide variety of things. I'm the practice lead for cloud. Obviously, AWS is the central tenet of that. And I'd like to introduce Dustin Brimberry. Dustin, quickly just say hello, and then I'll introduce you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Or evening, depending on where you are.
Yes, thank you. So Dustin is one of the senior technical trainers at AWS. We're very lucky to have him to join our webinar today. And I just want to say he is a 13 times AWS certified person. He has literally every certificate that AWS can offer. The depth of knowledge that shows is tremendous, and we thank you very much for joining us today and sharing some of your knowledge. So thank you very much, Dustin.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
No problem. Thank you again. So I'm going to quickly talk initially, and then I'll turn over a lot of the presentation to Dustin. So the first thing here is, why do people want to move to the cloud? So maybe wherever your journey is in the cloud migration, whether you're still on-prem, whether you're like a hybrid or whether you're fully in the cloud, there's clearly reasons why you want to do it, right? Obviously, one aspect is innovation, agility, new customer experiences, application modernization. This is like one of the tenets. If you're like an IT-centric person, that's kind of what you're thinking about. If you're a security-centric person, one of the things that you get is obviously compliance and security that you get, and with AWS, and your ability to scale globally with M&As, especially from a security standpoint, which is very important because, you know, when you sometimes acquire a company or doing an M&A and they don't necessarily have the same underpinnings as you do, it would be better if you could just take their workloads to the cloud. That would help you with that migration. And obviously, another big aspect of why people move to cloud is the space around AI and machine learning is exploding, and it is a avenue where businesses can truly see massive gains and get true insights on their business, and can work with their customers in different ways and get better insights with their customers. So in order to do that in a cost-effective, safe way, obviously AWS has numerous ways to help you facilitate that. And as a side note here, our CTO is an expert in AI and ML, and he would love to discuss those topics with you. So if everybody's interested, definitely let us know, and we can coordinate a meeting with him. And then finally, just from an infrastructure perspective, the cost savings that you get long-term from the cloud, obviously you move a lot of your expenses to operational from project, the vendor consolidation, the supply chain, it will pay for itself over time. And with the ease of the ability to move things in and out, it would be a true benefit. And one final point here that I would like to make is, especially with, you don't understand the gains that your staff will have when you move to the cloud. Your staff will be able to do things and think about problems in a much different way. There are a lot of things that they do, which is humdrum, normal things that they do that will basically be eliminated, and their time comes back to them to really innovate. So that is like a benefit that if you haven't moved to the cloud, you should definitely think about. So there are numerous reasons to move to cloud. I've tried to lay out just a few here for you. Now, AWS gives you a broad spectrum of services, from relational databases, non-relational databases, warehouse, Hadoop, where you can do the machine learning. And a topic very close to me is operational analytics. I do a lot of work with DevOps, so Elasticsearch, Logstash, Kibana. These are all things that are like very dear to me. And another big point here is QuickSight. So maybe if you have a Power BI, or you're stuck in Cognos, old IBM products, and you want to move into a different space, get a much better bang for your buck, the QuickSight is the tool for you. And I briefly touched a lot of this. Dustin will go over a lot of this in detail. And finally, before I turn over the presentation to Dustin, I just want to talk about the one lakehouse effect, where basically all your data, if you move it to AWS, can then feed your database, your data lake. So you can have a scalable data lake. You can basically have, in essence, a uniform governance on how you're doing things, and it's going to be much more cost effective for you in your long term. Because basically now, instead of you're trying to build a data lake on-prem from numerous sources, the cost could go out of control very quickly. So this allows, being in AWS, having your data all in one place gives you just a tremendous advantage long term. Now with that, I'll turn over the presentation to Dustin, and obviously he will discuss more in detail, and I'll turn it back over to him. So Dustin?
Thanks, Tibu. So again, thanks everybody for attending this, and hopefully we can help you gain some better understanding of what AWS can do for you, and what our partner can help you with as well. So if you look at this diagram, it's there's a lot of databases represented here, and AWS didn't start off that way. If you go back to the very early days of AWS, first database we created in the cloud was RDS. Which you can see there. It's a relational database in the cloud, and it was a fully managed database that you didn't have to deal with. And then over time, we started coming out with other databases, because what a lot of customers are trying to do, they try to use RDS for everything. RDS is not a one-size-fits-all database. You can see you've got NoSQL workloads as well as SQL workloads. You need things like a document DB, which, like a Mongo or a Cassandra. Things that didn't exist in AWS, we've continued to create those and add those to the portfolio. Now, if you still come across some other database that we don't have out there yet, you can obviously put that on an EC2 instance. We're not going to look at every single one of these today, but we're going to pick out a few of them and just talk about them for a few minutes. So you could advance that for me, Thibaut. So, the benefits of database and analytic managed services, like it talks about here. Well, if you think about this, we're able to migrate without having to re-architect existing applications. So if I was using, say an Oracle database or a MySQL or a Postgres database on-prem, well, it's real easy to move that to RDS. And it's going to take away, by moving that to RDS and moving these workloads, we're going to take away some of that database administrative overhead that you'd be dealing with, because that gets offloaded to AWS. And you're going to get better performance when you're running in the cloud, because we have, very high-end systems that you can deploy that would be very expensive to do on premise. And we also have the ability to, use multiple availability zones. So we're deployed across multiple geographic locations, so that if there is some, event that happens, that say, some act of God, as they call it, that happens, that we don't go down. We can fail over to other regions. So we have that scalability. And also, moving to the cloud is going to give you that security that people get from AWS. Security is one of our 5 pillars of our well-architected framework. And we as AWS really focus on security and emphasize security. Next slide, please. So if you look at this kind of approach here, if you do everything yourself in the cloud, well, you're going to get some good things still. You do an EC2 instance and deploy everything. You're going to have to, manage everything yourself, or you can go to a fully managed approach. If we think back about that other slide we looked at earlier with those different databases, RDS, it's a fully managed database in the cloud. It's still running on compute instances. So you still have compute time that you're paying for. What AWS is rapidly doing is moving more and more of our services into a serverless approach. Things like Redshift have gone serverless. Things like EMR now are serverless. So we are making these moves so that you truly do have a pay-on-demand service like you do with electricity. You only pay for what you use instead of paying for idle resources. And with a fully managed database in the cloud now, you can focus on optimizing your queries, designing your queries, and your schema. You don't have to worry about backups and recovery and all these other aspects that come into play. And won't be dealing with routine maintenance or patching or any of this kind of stuff that comes up. It's designed to take all of that pressure off of your team so that you can focus on what you do best as your organization. Next slide, please. So RDS is the first of these databases. Like I said, it was the first managed database we had in AWS. And it supports now 6 different databases that you can run. You can run Aurora, you can run MySQL, Postgres, Maria, Microsoft SQL Server, or Oracle. So all of these can be run on RDS. So it's real easy if you want to do a lift and shift to just pick up what you had on-prem and move it over to one of these databases. And you're going to be able to get the advantages because it's going to be easier to administrate. You're going to get performance and scalability on that because I can scale my storage as I need to, or if I need to go to a larger instance size, I can easily do that. And if we bring Aurora into the equation, which we'll talk about in a minute, Aurora gives us a whole lot more capability than what RDS alone does. But RDS is also going to give you the security and the compliance aspects of it. Next slide, please. Now, the thing about RDS, when it first came out, we really didn't have the ability to look inside of the instance and what's actually going on in there because you didn't have the ability to install like a CloudWatch agent. And that was the request that customers made. It's like, we want to see, what's going on inside of the actual server. And this is where we created this new thing. It's been out a few years now, but it's still fairly new, of RDS Performance Insights, where you're able to actually measure your database load over time, look where your bottlenecks are and all these kind of things, because we have an agent that we stick inside of RDS for you, since you don't have the ability to install anything in RDS yourself like that. Next slide, please. The other service we want to look at is EMR. EMR is our basically, it's our ETL service in AWS. It's one of the ETL services we have. ETL, if you're not familiar with it, stands for extract, transform, load. And so you're able to take those data sets, unstructured data, and be able to apply structure to it, run it through different types of optimizations using Spark clusters. And the thing about EMR, it's designed to be low cost because you can run a lot of things, especially with Spark, because Spark is an in-memory database service. And so typically you can do it on disk, but most of the time it's in memory for the performance advantages. So what you can do with Spark is you can run on spot instances with EC2 because I'm not worried about storing anything on a disk anymore. I can keep that stuff in S3 and never worry about the disk. Everything's in memory. So if an instance goes away because a spot gets terminated, I can easily replace that. You can also use reserved instances with this. And using S3 storage. So we don't even have to keep anything in our EMR cluster. We can keep everything in an S3 bucket and then bring this up on demand as we need it using something like EMRFS, which is the EMR file system, to bring the data in. Or we can use copy commands like we do into Redshift. Various different ways of getting the data in. And EMR is designed to be very easy to use. Now, the nice thing about EMR, they announced something at reInvent back in December with a new feature with EMR, because now EMR has a serverless feature. It's in early adoption phase. You can actually go to the AWS website and you can request access to be an early adopter. It's not free. You still have to pay, but you can get access to it as an early adopter if you want to start using it. And you're going to be able to run your Spark workloads. You can run Presto. It can run all of these. I don't know if it does HBase yet, but it will eventually. We're going to be able to run all of these workloads in a serverless environment. So again, we're reducing costs and you're not paying for compute on an ongoing basis. It's only when you spin up the resources or when you actually consume or run a query or transform some data. Very similar to the way Glue works now. We really don't talk about Glue here, but Glue is another service similar to EMR. It uses Spark, and it can do your ETL jobs as well. So it gives you lots of options in AWS. It's not a one-size-fits-all kind of approach. And having partners there to help you make the right choice of what to pick is a very beneficial thing for you. Next slide, please. So EMR, like it says, makes Spark and Presto run faster. You're going to be able to run Spark and Presto faster in an EMR environment than you could, say, in your own on-prem environment. Because, again, we have these underlying resources that you can deploy. We're doing both because Spark and Presto are both in memory. We have very fast in-memory systems in AWS to deploy these things on. And you're going to be able to take advantage of, if you were using Spark or Presto on-prem, it's going to work the same way. You're going to be able to bring your code in and run that code just as though you did on-prem. And serverless is going to make it even better. Go ahead. So operational analytics, this is an interesting area where we want to be able to used tools like Elasticsearch, and AWS is actually kind of rebranded now. We call it OpenSearch now. It's still based on Elasticsearch. We can still use Kibana and Logstash with it, but OpenSearch is our newer implementation of Elasticsearch. There were some changes in some of the licensing things with Elasticsearch itself, and so we basically created this thing called OpenSearch. It's fully compatible with Elasticsearch. It's fully managed. And it's scalable and compliant. And again, you're only going to pay for what you use to a degree. We say for only what you use, as long as the servers are running, because there are EC2 instances deployed. It's not serverless. So you're going to be paying for server capacity when these things are running. Also, it's going to be very secure because these things get deployed in a VPC. We can take advantage of servers like KMS to encrypt our data. We do in-transit encryption using TLS 1.3. So lots of different things that we have going on there around Elasticsearch and OpenSearch for being able to visualize your data. Next slide. So ultra warm is a feature of Elasticsearch where we can take advantage. Basically, you can see here on the diagram, I don't have a way to annotate the slide, but if you look near the bottom of the slide, it says S3. These ultra warm nodes are in S3. We use a similar approach with something like Redshift, where we have the RA3 nodes that we've created now. With the RA3 nodes, we have this storage that's like in this ultra warm node that's in S3. And why S3? Because S3 is not only extremely durable, it's got 11 nines of durability, but it's also extremely cheap. You're looking at it, at maximum of 2.3 cents per gig per month for storage in S3. That cost goes down the more data that you store in S3. So taking advantage of S3 and its cost capabilities and its durability capabilities to store this data for your Elasticsearch service or your OpenSearch is a great approach to do. And it can scale up to 3 petabytes of data by doing this. You can't do that with a traditional disk approach, but with S3, it gives us that multiple petabytes of storage. Next slide, please. And one more. So if we talk about, we want to give customers database freedom. We want customers to be able to, we call it the old guard with the other, commercial databases out there that we deal with. Commercial databases are expensive. You probably have dealt with those databases. You've dealt with Oracle. You probably dealt with SQL Server. Licensing costs are expensive, and they're not getting any cheaper. They keep going up. Well, what we figured out is, customers are looking for a solution, and AWS or Amazon itself was even looking for a solution. If you go back to reInvent a few years ago, they were talking about this with Oracle and getting off of Oracle and Amazon. Well, we set out to do that. And Aurora is what we created in the process. And if you can understand that, a company as large as Amazon and with the e-commerce presence that we have to be running our databases, our relational databases on Aurora, that we're willing to gamble that. And so we're telling our customers now, hey, we're trying to help people get free of these commercial databases that they've been tied to in the past. And Aurora is going to give you scalability. It's extremely fast. It's also going to give you availability and durability. And we'll touch on the durability of it and to another degree in a few minutes. It's also highly secure. It's going to take advantage of KMS, key management service, to encrypt data, and it's fully managed just like RDS. So there's no service provisions, no software patching, and there's also an Aurora serverless that's becoming easier and easier for customers to adopt. And something you might want to look at. Even we don't talk about Aurora serverless here, but you might want to talk to Thibaut about, hey, what can Aurora serverless do for me, or what can Aurora do for me? Next slide, please. So Thibaut, I'm going to have him share a use case here, a scenario of something that they've worked on.
Thank you, Dustin. I appreciate it. We worked with this company called HintMD. They have what's called basically an integrated platform, basically supporting 30,000 physicians and physician practices doing point of sales and a variety of other functions. And they came to us and they wanted to basically rebrand it and build an in-house payment solution that discards their third-party commission costs. and they wanted to move everything to the cloud. So obviously, when we got involved, and obviously this is a long time client of ours, we've done a lot of work with them. We have a team of close to 20 engineers still working with them. Part of the big thing that we did is migrate away from their expensive database solutions. Now, obviously, I don't want to highlight what that solution was. You can imagine what it was, but we basically were one of the early adopters of moving them into Aurora, and obviously, we did a ton of other work for them, and really, we transformed them, and they are literally one of the best healthcare platforms out there. We can go into this at a detailed level from all aspects of AWS, right? Obviously, data analytics here we talked about today. Obviously, we do DevOps, true application modernization, a lot of the serverless talk that you've heard from Dustin here earlier. And obviously, we did the migration for them. So obviously, if you're in this process, any one of the 4 steps that you're in, feel free to contact us, and we'd love to talk to you. So I'll turn it back to Dustin.
Thanks, Tito. So as far as Aurora goes, continuing to talk about it, I mentioned to you it's high durability and high availability. We can take advantage of something with Aurora called a global database, where I can have my master deployed in one region, and I can have replicas created in another region. Now, people say, well, you can do that with RDS because you can have read replicas. That's true, but with read replicas with RDS, those read replicas, there's a lot more latency on that connection. You're looking at less than 1 second of latency of replication to anywhere in the world from your primary node. And the thing about Aurora Global Database is those replicas that are in the other regions, there's multiples there, because the beautiful thing about Aurora, I didn't mention it on the previous slide, the beautiful thing about Aurora, it decouples storage from compute. So you have your compute nodes and you have your storage nodes. And you don't have to decide up front how much storage you're going to use. It's going to grow with you as you grow, up to 128 terabytes. And so when we create a replica of Aurora in another region, we copy the entire data set over there. And so any updates to the database, because with Aurora, the log is the database. I don't have time to get into that, but it's a very small amount of data that's moved. So we're able to replicate that data in less than a second anywhere in the world onto the other database. And if something happens and something goes wrong, we can easily promote one of those replicas to be the primary at any moment, and with less than 60 seconds of downtime to do that. Next slide. Now, I think this is the final database we want to talk about here is Redshift. Redshift has been around AWS for a long time, and Redshift is a cloud data warehouse, and it is a petabyte scale. Even if you use something called Redshift Spectrum with it, it becomes an exabyte scale data warehouse. But with just Redshift, we are able to go up to 16 petabytes now if you use an RA3 cluster. And Redshift is going to integrate with your data lakes. It's highly scalable. You also can, with RA3, we can use something called Aqua, which is going to compile your queries into machine language and run those queries at a much higher speed than you could by running them regularly. Also, it's going to give you basically unlimited compute capacity, because I can easily add capacity, and I can configure concurrency scaling with my my worker queues for my Redshift clusters, and be able to scale out very large and be able to take advantage of being able to have resources as I need them without suffering any kind of performance hits. Also, Redshift is very low cost when you compare it to other commercial data warehouse solutions. It's extremely cost effective. And it's also certified. You can see here it's FedRAMP, SOX, etc. And it's going to have VPC encryption capabilities, and it can be used with KMS. And if KMS isn't good enough for what you're trying to do, you can actually use Cloud HSM with Redshift as well for your encryption needs. So you got a lot of flexibility when it comes to Redshift. I want to say one other thing about Redshift. Next slide. Redshift also has another component called Redshift ML. People say, well, you've got SageMaker. Why do you need Redshift ML? Well, the nice thing about Redshift ML, where is the data? The data is sitting in the data warehouse. And I want to be able to do manipulation on that data. Sure, I could move it back to S3 and then pull it into SageMaker and process it. That's all great. But we want to try to not move data around. We want to try to keep data in place as much as we can. So we created Redshift ML to take advantage of that. And Redshift ML will use XGBoost for its algorithm to do machine learning. And so it can help you with your pre-processing of data and deploying your actual models as you need to. But also you can deploy inference models directly with Redshift and run inference on your data against your SQL statements. It's a very powerful tool, and I would definitely recommend you reaching out to Thibaut and his team to learn more about that and how it can meet your needs. Next. So basically, AWS has a lot of tools to help you on your migration journey. And, Thibaut can help you with what you're trying to accomplish. We have tools to help you like DMS, the Database Migration Service. It's going to take your on-prem database because you're like, well, I've got, this huge database. I need to get it to the cloud. How do I do that? DMS can help you do that. The Database Migration Service is going to take your data and bring it into AWS. And we'll talk about it a little bit more here in a second. And you're going to have experts like Thibaut to help you with this process. We have a program called Database Freedom. Basically, like we mentioned earlier, we're trying to get you free of these expensive licensing costs and set you free from that. And so this Database Freedom program will help you with that. And AWS has programs for if you qualify to make that more cost effective for you to do that migration as well. Next slide. So the DMS, the Database Migration Service, is going to, like it says, accelerate your migrations to AWS. The really cool thing about DMS is I'm able to take my data from my on-prem database, set up DMS, deploy that, and now I can keep the database up. And now there's a copy of all my data that I'm using on-prem being replicated to DMS into the cloud. So I don't have to move immediately. I can move when I'm ready. And then once I decide, hey, okay, I'm ready, I could do one final cutover and move everything else over. But it's able to keep that link in place. And if I decide, okay, I want to go ahead and move over, I'm going to move over to the cloud, I can easily go back with DMS as well. So if something doesn't go right, I need to go back, I can easily replicate that back out of the cloud, back onto an on-prem database. And it works with quite a few different relational databases like you see here. It also works with MongoDB. And the other beautiful thing about DMS, if I'm not ready, I just want to say, okay, I'm going to keep my on-prem database, but I want to start making backups of everything in the cloud. I can set up DMS to copy data into S3. So all of my database data is inside of S3. And when I'm ready to move, it's going to be very easy because I can just take DMS and tell it to migrate from S3 into whatever database I've chosen. Beautiful solution. Next slide. So the schema conversion tool is here to help you when you have workloads where you're dealing with heterogeneous workloads. Say I want to migrate an Oracle database to, say, Aurora. Well, there may be some stored procedures, other things I have to deal with that if I just try to directly migrate, it may not work. Now with DMS, when you use it, DMS does a row-by-row copy of your database into AWS. And the schema conversion tool, what it's going to do, it's not an AWS service. It's a tool you install on your local system that's going to look at your existing database and tell you whether or not these stored procedures, what has to change, what kind of changes you need to make to your schema to make this effective. And it walks you through that whole process, and it'll help you convert those tables. Now, it won't actually You'll still have to run your DMS. It's a separate tool, but it's going to help you with that migration process and optimizing your schema conversions for those heterogeneous migrations. For homogeneous migrations, you don't need it, but for heterogeneous, you do. Next slide. So this is talking about the Database Migration Accelerator Program, and how different tools and expertise, bringing partners in can help you migrate commercial databases like Oracle or SQL Server to Aurora. It's a beautiful solution, and Thibaut has another story he wants to share there.
Thank you, Dustin. I appreciate it. Avalon AI is a client that's kind of near and dear to my heart. They are a very forward-thinking company that are trying to fight against opioid addiction by monitoring, analyzing, and figuring out what physicians' practices are. They've processed over 15,000 collection points, processed medical surgery and prescription data. They needed a solution that will give them scalability and performance. For us, we basically ensured that we use the database migration accelerator. We did a schema analysis, the schema tool conversion that they did. We were able to help them get their MVP out because they were on a database. They had a scale partial working in a database that will remain nameless right now. But we were able to move them to Aurora, get them into the cloud, help them with the migration, not just with the database migration, but their overall migration. Obviously, and obviously they're using SageMaker and they're using S3. They're doing tons of things and they're doing great work for, really people who are suffering under opioid addiction, done by doctors themselves and really unknowingly, because certain doctors have patterns of prescriptions and certain patterns of things that they do because they've learned this over years. But this solution and this company is coming up with basically really inventive ways to see real patterns and help people break their addiction. And we're happy to be their partner. And like I said, we use the Migration Accelerator program, and they've been great success. And obviously, they're going for their next round of funding very soon. So obviously, we're happy to be their partner. So I'll turn it back over to Dustin.
Thanks, Thibaut. So the final thing I want to talk about here, I mentioned it briefly, the Database Freedom Program. Thibaut can tell you a lot more about it. If you qualify for it, it's definitely a worthwhile program to look at because AWS can assist you in your migration. There's incentives and things that are offered to help customers that qualify for the program. So it's something you may definitely want to look at. And with that, we'll turn it over to questions unless you got anything else to add, Thibaut.
No, not right now, but we do have a question from our participant here, and I'll quickly answer it. I'll give a good answer, and then we can, Dustin is a little bit more for me than you, but then I'll let you see what you can share on this one. What is your approach with UI, UX, and AWS Cloud? Can you share technical approaches on it? Okay, so this is a very interesting question. It's a great approach. I would look at it this way. The things that you normally do with UI, UX, Figma, and your normal mechanism, you can accelerate them tremendously with S3 and cloud, the CloudFront, and to basically push your UI UX basically to the next level. And obviously taking advantage of serverless, obviously taking advantage of React, and to really take your clients through an experience, a much better experience. Dustin, do you have any thoughts about this?
Not really, Tebow. That's really not an area.
Okay, gotcha.
I'm
Yeah,
not
no, that's
exactly.
fine.
I'm not even sure I really understand what they're asking about UI UX with
That's okay.
in terms of NGO.
I would just say to the customer, to the client who asked that question, feel free to contact with us. We can have a session with me and our CTO Andre, who's an expert on AI and ML. We handle a lot of these kind of situations, so we'd love to talk to you about it. Okay, I got another question here. What I was so Dustin, in your experiences, what are some of the benefits beyond just database freedom that clients can get from moving to AWS?
That's a really good question. So the thing about the moving to AWS, you're going to get the cost savings by being in the cloud. That's a big thing. But the other thing you're going to get all these other AWS services now you can integrate with your database. So if I want to have a data warehouse, now I can take those existing databases and I can take that data and move it into a data warehouse to be able to do analytics and things like that on the data. Also, it gives me access to services like Kinesis and, like you mentioned, S3 and other AWS services that I may want to use to work with my data. The closer you can keep your data to what you're actually trying to do with it, the more cost effective and the easier and more timely you're going to be able to get your results. And so I think those are all important aspects of being in the cloud, and especially being in AWS, because we offer such a wide portfolio of services.
Well, that's a great answer, Justin. I just want to reiterate that a lot of what we do with Avalon AI is very closely tied to that, because obviously we want to keep the data close to where it's processing. So we appreciate that. I got another question here, Dustin. For legacy type shops that are running old style ERPs, can those kind of places even entertain this kind of movement to the cloud? Because obviously, these kind of shops, some of these are very old, I wouldn't say old, working, highly durable solutions, but they're on-prem, and there are some limitations there. Do you have any examples of that?
I don't personally, because I'm, in the training world. I hear customers say things, but I know that, you shared with me some of your own experience with this. So I think that'd be a great one for you to.
Okay, perfect. So basically, we've taken many clients through that, right? Obviously, there's when you've been in business 18 years, like we have, you're going to see all sorts of things. Like, now, obviously, we do a lot of startups, and basically we immediately move them to the cloud and get started coding. But I know personally, and we've got many clients who are basically running old style legacy systems, old ERPs, and we've helped them basically migrate pieces of their system over, and they're running in a hybrid model. So it can be done. And in fact, we can also help you move your system completely. Obviously, we've done migrations specifically for Avalon AI. We'd love to talk to you about it if you have any other questions. And I believe there is someone who's raising their hand. I would just need a little help on how to allow that person to speak. Okay, so if you, whoever's raising their hand, please feel free to talk if you have any questions.
Not sure. Maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
Not sure what's going on. But if you look back up, Tiba, there was a question, a follow-up
Oh,
question
right.
asked about cloud and serverless backend. That question that Jerry asked.
Okay, got it. I was asking about the kind of full stack approach. Definitely. I think that's definitely something, in terms of, full stack, definitely there's Amplify, which definitely can accelerate your front end, the development. So I definitely think we should definitely have a talk about that, and would love to coordinate that with you. So thank you for the question. So does anybody else have any questions?
I'll add one thing. You mentioned the ERP systems. We have a lot of customers migrating their SAP on-prem environments to AWS. And we've designed that to make it very easy because you can run your HANA databases in the cloud very easily.
Well, that's a great point. Thank you for bringing that up, Dustin. We're, as part of Svitla, we have what's called a team of Svitla team stand members, which are advanced technology professionals, technology consultants. And we are partnered with one consultant who is an expert in SAP migrations. So if you're in that market and you're looking at that, please feel free to give us a call and or get in touch with us, and we can coordinate a meeting with you guys. So thank you again, Dustin. Does anybody have any questions? Well, if that's the case, I want to thank everybody for spending the time with us this afternoon, or evening, or morning to
Somebody's asking a question there.
Advise on a career pathway for analytics. Oh, well, obviously, well, you know what? I'll let our certified trader discuss about that. That's a perfect question for Dustin.
So for AWS analytics, there's a lot of different directions you can go with analytics, depending on, if you want to go with a machine learning approach, if you want to go with like a data engineer approach, whatever you're trying to do, with analytics, there's a lot of different directions you can go. If you really want to get in a career pathway for AWS analytics, my recommendation is that you're going to learn, you need to make sure you know Python, and you're going to want to know things like pandas, because you're going to be able to need to do manipulation of the data and know how to do that in code. Those are good starting points. And we do have classes. We have a lot of training classes that we offer at AWS. There's a lot of free classes that you can do just by going online and watching some videos. And some are just like some presentations that you go through that are free. And we also have ILTs. Right now they're VILT, but we'll be getting back to in-person training, hopefully in the near future, because that's what we love to do. But there is a lot of offerings out there. We have classes on big data. We have classes on data warehousing. We have classes on data lakes. So there's lots of different directions you can go and work on that. If you want to get that certification in analytics on AWS, it's a very tough certification. I think it's probably the second hardest certification that we have, next to the advanced networking. I thought it was the second hardest anyway. And that certification, you really need a wide range of knowledge across all the AWS services, like EMR, like Glue, like Lake Formation, like Redshift. All these analytics services come into play, and you really want to be familiar with those. But I'd recommend, if you really don't have any knowledge at all, that you just start with some of the online stuff that we have on the analytics domain, and that would steer you in the right direction. You can check that out.
And I'll just add this point here. Dustin definitely is looking forward to ILT. He told me before the pandemic he was on the road 190 days in the year. So that's an incredible number.
Yes, and I'm ready to get back to it.
Well, it's
Nothing
been
like in-person training.
absolutely. So it's been great talking to everybody here today. Dustin, thank you very much. Your knowledge, your experience is very much appreciated here.
And you can, and anybody can feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn as well. That's out there. I'm an open networker. I'm happy to connect. So.
Again, thank you again, Dustin. It's a pleasure sharing this talk with you here, and to all our clients and potential clients out there. Thank you for taking the time to speak with to listen to us today. Please let us know. Get in touch with us if you have any questions. Obviously, we're always here to listen, and we definitely want to help you guys make that move. If you move to the cloud, if you haven't made the move, or if you're in the process and need extra help, we can certainly help you there. And if you need to get started and you're still on-prem, definitely we're there too. So Sweetla's cloud practice has 4 basic pillars: migration, application modernization, data analytics, which Dustin talked about great today, and DevOps. So we're always willing to talk to our clients. We love talking to you and learning from you and seeing how we can help. So once again, thank you very much again. And we look forward to seeing you again at the next webinar. So thank you again.